Okay, so your junior season comes and goes. Does it end up being pretty solid? Like, would you say that's the best year that you have?
Yeah, I think so. It definitely finished strong. I started pretty slow, and this would be advice that I'd give anyone going into the draft process. You have to eliminate the draft, because if you're throwing for the draft or you're throwing for a scout in the stands, you're not pitching, you're not being a teammate, you're not doing all that stuff. And so fortunately for me, my first 2 outings were horrible. I think I went like 3 innings, 5, and then like 4 innings, 5 runs. Lost both. So I was 0-2 with a 17.5 ERA. And I was like, well, I'm going to get my degree and go sell insurance. I'm going to go do something. And my coach sat me down and he was like, Rob, I love you to death. Matt Hobbs. He's like, I love you to death. He put his hand on my head and he was like, you have to turn this around. And he's like, you need to stop being so soft. You need to stop thinking about velocity. You need to stop thinking about throwing against some hitter that's going to be drafted in the first round and having to get him out. You need to compete and you need to hate everyone you throw against and dominate everybody you throw against, whatever. And so he sat me down, and after that, I went on a crazy run that like I ended the year at a 3 or whatever it was. And I remember the time I got drafted was the Cubs in the second round, but they had seen me throw in the SEC tournament, and they watched me throw, and Theo Epstein told me himself he drafted me because of how I was on the mound, not because of anything I did, no result, nothing. He said, you grabbed the ball, you went after him. He's like, you got in a yelling match with Hunter Renfroe. He's like, you hated the other team and you wanted to win so bad. He's like, that's all we want for the Cubs. And they drafted me off that one performance.
Wow.
But nothing related to how many innings I went, how many strikeouts, nothing. They're like, we just like the person that you are and how you carry yourself on the mound. And that was all Matt Hobbs.
Wow. Throughout your junior season, had you had any teams? I'm kind of unfamiliar with the process, but I've heard stories from guys who have been drafted that they fill out like questionnaires and people will reach out to them and they'll have conversations throughout the year. Did that happen at all for you that junior season?
Yeah. So they have, back in the day, I don't know how it is now, I'm so far removed from it. They had like a top 200s thing. And like, if you were a top 200 prospect or 300, I can't remember what number it was, like you had to fill these questionnaires out and teams would come talk to you. I don't know if they even do that anymore, but I'll never forget the Yankees they sent like 3 people. I filled out like these 250 question tests and all these things. And I was like, okay, I'm for sure going to go to the Yankees, right? Like I had 3 different meetings with them. It was nuts. And the Cubs, they sent a guy named Ty Nichols, who I still talk to. He actually texted me last week now that I'm back on the Cubs. He showed up and we go sit in the press box and he's got this 300 question test and he puts it in front of me and he's like, you have an hour, go. And so I answered the first 3 questions and he takes the test away from me. He's like, I just wanted to see if you were going to do it. He's like, we already like you. See you later. And he walked off. And I was like, Cubs aren't going to draft me. I was like, that guy, he didn't even talk to me at all. He just wanted to make sure that I would do the questionnaire. And once I did that, I checked his box and that was it.
Wow. So where were you when you ended up being drafted?
I was at my house with my dad and I went to a workout with the Giants. They had pick 24 and then the Yankees they had like pick 30, 34 and 36 or something. They had like 3 picks in there. One of them was Aaron Judge. So they did not miss the pick. They had 3 picks, and I remember I was probably going there. And then if not there, the Astros had picked 40, and then that's all I had heard. And so the Giants took somebody else. They took another left-handed pitcher. The Yankees took a lefty high school kid. And so once they took him, my agent was like, probably not going to be you. They're probably not going to go 2 lefty arms with these 3 picks here. And so once that happened, I remember I looked at my dad, and I was like, this is excruciating. I was like, I don't want to sit here and wait any longer. So we ended up watching Game of Thrones. We'll watch like half an episode of Game of Thrones. And my agent was like, Cubs 41. And I turned on the TV. And as we turned on the TV, Kerry Wood's walking out. And he's like, Rob Zastryzny. And I was like, there it is. I'm on the Cubs. And I thought that was cool. And like I said, I talked to Theo shortly after. And I'll never forget this. They called me and they were like negotiating with my agent signing bonus stuff. And my strategy was like, be very signable. Like whatever you guys think is fair, I'll fly out to Arizona the next day. And they're like, well, that's not necessary. Like we'll negotiate. And so they sent us an offer. We're like, perfect. That's fair. We accepted it. So I texted the travel guy. I was like, fly me out to Arizona. And they're like, well, don't you want to go to Chicago? And I was like, no, I'm not going to go to Chicago. Like I'm going to go play. Because I thought going to Chicago to sign a piece of paper was worthless. I was like, I'm going to go to Arizona, sign the same piece of paper and get ready and get after it. And so I get to Arizona and I remember the assistant GM talked to me. He's like, you're the only guy I'd ever turned down going to sign at Wrigley Field. And I was like, man, I didn't know I was going to go sign at Wrigley Field. I thought I was flying into Chicago, going to go meet someone in an office, sign a paper, and then fly to Arizona. And so I just was so excited to get my pro ball career started that I was like, no, I don't need any to hold my jersey, put my jersey on. I was like, just get me to Arizona. I'm ready to go.
So was it just your dad and yourself there when you find out you were drafted?
My mom was there too, but she was nervous cooking in the kitchen.
Okay.
Yeah, she was stressed out. My dad was, but he was playing cool like he always does. And I had my phone, and then I'll never forget this. I had my phone. It had 50% battery, and my dad was like, charge it just in case, you don't want to miss a phone call from your agent, whatever. And I was like, nah, 50% battery, no big deal. So I get drafted, and my phone's blowing up. I hug my dad. I go hug my mom, and I go grab my phone, and notifications going crazy. People tweeting at me, texting me, whatever. My phone died. And so everyone, the Cubs were trying to get a hold of me. My phone was dead. So it's on the charger. I'm panicking and waiting for this thing to charge back up. And every time I take it off the charger, it dies again because people are texting me. So it was just one of those where it's it was one of the coolest days of my life because my dream to go get drafted and everything like that, but also the love that I got and support from everyone in my life was really cool.
Yeah. Was Wyatt around?
Yeah, Wyatt was around. I can't remember where he was at, but I saw him the next morning.
Okay.
But yeah, the draft was later at night, and I remember my agent was like, do you want to have a get together? We can put a camera up or we can do whatever. And I was like, no. I was like, what if I don't get drafted? And he was like, you don't have to worry about not getting drafted. He's like, but I was kind of on the fringe of going day one or not. Yeah. And it was just one of those where I didn't want to have everyone sitting around, and then I ended up going on day 2 and just being like, all right, guys, you can go home. I didn't want to do that. So it was just, I kept it as small as possible. But yeah, I called Wyatt right after, and then I saw him the next morning, and we celebrated. Did
he tell you, congrats, man, but you need to go get better?
Pretty much, yeah. He was like, I don't know what you're so happy about. You're not in the big leagues. I was like, oh, okay. That's just how he is.